Hey, Cameron here, and it is another day, another Surface launch. And the device I'm particularly interested in is the Surface Laptop Studio 2. So I kind of wanted to go over what I like about the device, what I don't like about the device, and what I'm skeptical about for this machine. And to start us out, let's go ahead and look over the spec sheet and see what we're getting here, how it improves over the previous generation. So let's go ahead and take a look. This is the spec sheet for the first Surface Laptop Studio, and in white we will have the Surface Laptop Studio 2. So let's just go down the list here. We've got 13th gen Intel Core i7 13700H, and that is a great processor. Sure, it's late to the party. You know, the 13th generation has been out for a long time. 14th generation is on the horizon, but that's just how Surface devices go. But this is going to be a massive uplift in performance over 11th gen Intel that we had in the Surface Laptop Studio. So I really like that we're getting a much better processor here. We now have 3 different graphics options in addition to just having iGPU. So for graphics options, we've got a 4050, a 4060, and a RTX 2000 8th generation. It's a kind of a workstation laptop, and workstation GPU. And what you usually see with those is, for example, this RTX 2080A is literally the same thing as a 4060 in terms of core count, in terms of memory, in terms of everything that matters functionally on the silicone. It is the same thing as a 4060. It's just been validated to a higher level, and usually they lock the clock speeds down lower, and they don't allow you to overclock or give you any controls to overclock on these workstation ones. So for gamers out there, your best GPU is definitely going to be the 4060. I would not expect that you're going to get any better performance with the 8th generation RTX 2000. So let me just put that out there. One thing that's awesome here is it's an 80 watt GPU. Last year's Surface Laptop Studio was only a 50 watt GPU. And people really don't realize how big of an uplift we're going to get with this generation of device. And let me illustrate that to you using this website here. This is a graph of the 3050 Ti, which we had in the Surface Laptop Studio. And if you look at it at the 50 watt range, which is where the Surface Laptop was, if you extrapolate this out, and in some of my own testing, I know that it would basically be right here. So we're going from a 50 watt GPU on Laptop Studio, and we're going to an 80 watt, potentially 4060. And that's 10,000 versus 5,000, my friends. And that is actually double the GPU. And you hear that a lot, like, oh, we get, double the performance. A lot of times that's just, frankly, it's bullshit. It's marketing speak. In this one application, it did this much better. No, the 4000 series NVIDIA GPUs are the real deal for these lower wattages. And if it really performs at that 80 watt level, this is a massive uptick in performance over Laptop Studio. And if you guys remember, I think we went, for Surface Book, so the first time they had that 15-inch Surface Book and they launched it with the 1060, that actually felt like, wow, this is like getting up to like gaming laptop spec. And then they came around and they introduced Surface, I think it was Surface Book 2 that first had the 15-inch, and then the Surface Book 3 had a 1660 Ti, which frankly boosted performance a little bit, but okay, 1660 Ti. Laptop Studio comes out with a 3050 Ti. Guess what? You went from a 1660 Ti with I think 60 watts to a 3050 Ti with 50 watts and less memory. It was a side grade. So we've been side grading the Laptop Studio and the Surface Book line for so long that we're finally getting a massive GPU update, and this is going to be killer. Having a 4060 in the Laptop Studio 2 is going to combine so many good things. For example, you're going to get the pen touch, great screen, great build quality of a Surface device. and you're going to get a 13th gen, tons of cores, performance cores, E-cores, and you're getting that 4000 series NVIDIA GPU that you can actually play real top tier games with. So this is exciting. However, you're going to pay out the butt for this thing. And that's one of the things I don't like about this is the pricing. And we're going to get to that in a minute, but let's keep going down the list here. So if we look at the specs, we now are being offered 64 gigs of RAM, which we have never had that in the past. We've had 32 gigabyte options, but 64 is great. A lot of people don't need that, but for people who are running CAD work, who want the graphics, want it all, this is a great option. So we also have 1 and 2 terabyte options, nothing really new here. Let's talk about that display. Now, if you read the spec sheet here, you would think, wow, it looks like there's a lot of upgrades versus the Laptop Studio. But if you actually look at it, the resolution is the same, refresh rate's the same. They mention color profile, sRGB, and Vivid. I believe we already had that on the Surface Laptop Studio. I believe it was already individually color calibrated. And you'd be like, oh, it's HDR certified. Well, guess what? We already had the HDR toggle in the Laptop Studio, and even though it's now certified, last generation still, I mean, it doesn't show it here, but it had 468 nits. So it was already bright enough to qualify for that HDR 400 certification. So my best guess is this is the exact same panel as last year. Hopefully I'm wrong on that. Hopefully it's a little bit improved. Maybe manufacturing process is just a little bit better, a little bit brighter. That would definitely be a game changer because the Laptop Studio wasn't super bright, but it does have a very nice display. It's fine if it's exactly the same as the previous generation because that display was so good. All right, so battery life. 19 hours if you don't have a GPU, 18 hours if you do have the GPU. I'm assuming you have to not be using it to actually still get the 18 hours. If you have a 2 terabyte SSD, suddenly you lose 2 hours. So I don't know what's up with that spec, but maybe their 2 terabyte manufacturer is just not very efficient on the SSD. There's no reason it should use that much more power, but if they're using a super efficient 1 terabyte versus a high speed 2 terabyte, I could see that definitely, affecting power consumption. Maybe, and the 1 terabyte one might be like Gen 3, and the 2 terabyte might be Gen 4. If it's running Gen 4, it might be pulling a lot more power. I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens there. So let's look at more specs here. One of the things I noticed is, look at this. This thing is actually, the new one is 0.86 inches. And the old one was 0.746 inches. So a little bit thicker, but the major thing to consider right here is the GPU enabled one is now 4.37 pounds. So this is gonna be a big boy. And I think it's because they probably added more cooling because the GPU is going from 50 watts to 80 watts. They're gonna have to have more mass in there to kind of cool things off. So going to 4.37 pounds from 4 pounds, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. It was 4 pounds. I'm not seeing it here, but I know that it was 4 pounds. It's probably right in front of me. Yeah, here it is. 4 pounds on last gen. So significant weight difference. I don't like that because 4 pounds was kind of like, okay, this is the upper limit for me, but what are you going to do? I don't know what to do about that. So 4.37 pounds. We now have the new AI chip, which lets you have studio effects and auto framing, eye contact, background blur. We'll have to see how well that actually works. You can do a lot of that in software already, but it should be more battery efficient using a custom AI chip to do those things. Quad Omnisonic speakers with Dolby Atmos. I'm pretty sure we probably had basically the same thing. We had Dolby Atmos for sure in last generation. And don't get me wrong, last generation's audio was great. One of the best sounding audio solutions on a laptop I've ever seen, along with the mics, have always been good on the Laptop Studio. So that's kind of fine. Nothing new here, though. I mean, unless quad omnisonic actually means something. Maybe there's 4 speakers in it. I can't remember if there's 4 speakers in it before. There might have been. So I wouldn't put too much value into this, though, because last gen was already so good. If it even stays equal, anything bonus is going to be icing on the cake. One of the great things that we're getting this year as well is the micro SD card reader. Some people are like, why isn't it a full size? It's like, I don't even know do they even sell full size SD cards anymore? I always buy the micro ones, and if I need it, I have the adapters, but I'm happy with the micro SD card reader. I wouldn't want a full size one personally, but that's just me. It still maintains a headphone jack. That is great. We've got Surface Connect port. Nothing new here. However, I did notice that if you have the GPU, you now have 120 watts. So we're going back to, with last gen, it was always 102 watts, always 102 watts. And they kind of discontinued that beefier power adapter. It's back. So, and I don't know what this means, because it used to be a 127 watt power adapter, and now it's a 120 watt. So I don't know if that's just a typo, because it was always you reserve 7 watts for the USB. So the 127 watt power supply was actually a 120. You know what they probably did? I bet they removed the USB jack from the power adapter. I bet that's what they do, and it's just a 120 watt Surface Connect charger. I don't know that for sure, but that would be my guess, seeing 120 versus 127. The real question that remains to be seen is if USB-C power delivery can exceed 100 watts. Because last gen could use the full 100 watts, it was fine. But if it's pushing things up to 120, your GPU might be gimped if you're powering it over USB-C, and you'll need to use the Surface Connect dongle to actually get full performance on your GPU. That's my guess. I will test this when mine comes in, but just be aware that if you're planning on using this with USB-C as well as you did with maybe your Surface Laptop Studio Original, maybe it's not going to happen unless you plug it in with the Surface Connect. Okay, so battery size has stayed the same. And so those are the specs of this device. And I mentioned briefly what I don't like about this thing, and that is the price. I mean, I get it. Price of RAM has come down substantially. The price of storage has dropped off a cliff. And so what they did is, rather than try to differentiate by choosing more RAM and more disk space, SSD space, is they've kind of added more GPU options, and they're distinguishing their offerings by that. So it starts at $19.99 if you have student discounts. You're seeing I have a student discount that's available to me, so that's where you're seeing these reduced prices. But MSRP starts at $2K on this thing, and that's without even a GPU. So this is just $2K for this. Is it with inflation? It's hard to say that it's not justified, because there's so many devices, like Ultrabook devices, that aren't as unique as the Laptop Studio, that have higher prices than this. But come on, guys. If you want the higher tier 4060 GPU, it's going to start at 3.3K. And that's just a 4060. You can get, the X13 with the 4070 in it, basically was worth it. It was $2,500. So they're asking $800 more than an X13 4070 for a 4060. Anyone who thinks they can sell a 4060 for 3.3K is freaking up in the night. And geez, that's such a hard sell, even stepping up from a 4050. So let's do a little analysis here. So let's go back to our sheet. So if you choose the 4050 version and you're here at 80 watts, the 4050 version is going to net you about 8K time SPY. If you splurge and get that 4060, you're going to get about a 10K time SPY, assuming their 80 watt figure is not gimped by thermals, which we know that they will do. I'll do my analysis on thermal throttling, because I would love it if they just packed enough cooling into this thing and just made it robust enough that it can deliver 80 watts all day long. But I'm super skeptical of that based on their past behavior. It probably has burst to 80 and then you're going to see it taper off. Hopefully that's not the case. I'll do the testing for you guys in the future once I get mine in hand, and I'll let you know. But if you get the 4050 at 80 watts, if you compared that to something like the Z13 or X13 with a 4050 in it, it's actually, you're getting a bit more performance. Say you're getting 8K. If you're at 65 watts on the Z13, you're getting, it's not that big a difference. If you're on the X13, you're only getting 60 watts. You're bumping up from here to here. So it's a difference. But one thing to keep in mind is if you had the 4070 X13, which I do have right now, and I'm getting 10K performance at 60 watts, if I get the 4060 on the Laptop Studio, I should expect to get the exact same performance. So, that's the other question. People who are familiar with my channel may know what I use day to day, and I am using the X13 with 4070, but I have pre-ordered. I'm telling you that it's way too expensive, but yet I did order the 4060 version of the Surface Laptop Studio 2 because I love that form factor. The only reason I jumped ship from Surface to the Asus products, the Asus portable products, is the fact that Surface did not give me the performance that I needed, and here we are a year later, and they finally are catching up, which we knew would happen. But I knew this was coming. I was expecting it to be a 4060, and I have been planning my expenditures so I can afford this one. So I am getting the 4060 version, but I do not think that is the option that most people should get. I think that the best option for most people is this one right here, 2.4K. You get a 4050, but we all know, I did a video on this, the 4050 is baller. It really is baller. Look at it compared to the 3050 Ti at 80 watts. Like, you're going to get a massive uptick in performance even with just the 4050. With the option for more if you have expendable income to get a 4060. It's a hard ask, and frankly I don't even think this video will get many views because I think that Microsoft has just priced itself out of the market where mass market appeal matters, and people will even be paying attention to this video, frankly, because it's just such an expensive device. Although if you can get it with discounts, I know that if you can get the student discount, and if you can get, some price breaks with, there's like 7% cash back on certain things, you could get into a 4050 Laptop Studio 2 for about 2K. And that's not too bad. That is doable. If you're really strapped for cash, I would say you should probably wait for sales, because they will come. Within 3 months, 3 or 4 months, I'm sure there'll be sales on this thing. There'll be open box ones at Best Buy that you can go pick up for hundreds cheaper. And so if you're strapped for cash and really want this, but you don't have the means, don't get caught up in hype and go just buy it and put yourself out unless you have the means to do so. But yeah, so if you do get that one, you'll be able to, get the 512 gigabyte SSD, crack this thing open. You'll be able to upgrade the SSD because I'm assuming it's still a 2280, which is easy to upgrade. I've done videos on how to do this on the Surface Laptop Studio. It may be slightly different on the Studio 2. I will also be looking at that because I plan on getting this one right here with the 1 terabyte SSD and the 4060, and I plan on upgrading that SSD to probably at least a 4 terabyte drive, maybe even an 8 terabyte, depending on how low prices drop between now and when I actually get this. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Surface Laptop Studio 2. If you have questions about this device, let me know. I am super excited about it because it's just combining the best of all worlds. I love Surface devices. I love the styling. I love the build quality, and I love having pen. I love having a pen that actually just snaps right onto the device. I love having that RTX 4000 performance. Oh, there's just so much to love about this machine. I love that it flips down, and it's everything I want. And that's why I'm willing to splurge a little bit to get the 4060 version of it. But anyways, those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Questions and comments below, and we'll see you on the next video.